Steve Harvey did an interview on the Hughley Show that is on TV1. Apparently, he's got a new show that's on TV1. And in episode, let's see, season 1, episode 9, he had DL had Steve Harvey on his show. They were talking about various topics. One of them was the Monique interview. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why this fool would actually bring up this subject again, or even agree to talk about this subject again, because there's no amount of spin or clarification that this dude can do to undo the damage that he has already done in front of America when he opened his mouth, opened his chapped lip mouth. You guys have got to see this video. I'm going to go ahead and show it, and then I'll come back and we'll discuss the video.
I was telling you about the Monique interview, and I hadn't gotten a chance to see it. I guess Lou, my road manager, had pulled it up, and the interview played like two people who love each other and had a disagreement, and then the backlash was I didn't understand, because I thought you were trying to do something solid for somebody. And then it turned into something that I thought was just, I couldn't believe it was going on.
Mansplaining and just really kind of being condescending towards her. Just a lot of stuff. I was like, I didn't really
And
get
the interview
that.
didn't play like that to me. And I just, at your show we were talking, and you were explaining that it had been a very long interview.
I mean, the interview actually was 52 minutes.
Jesus, wow.
I edited to protect her because it was some really crazy stuff. But what was crazy was, in protecting her, I left myself out there too. You know, I misspoke. It didn't get covered right. Because if you had seen the whole interview, it was it was just two people who've known each other for a long time.
Right.
We go back to kings and queens.
Right.
Big brother, little sister conversation that we should have had in private.
Right.
Be honest with you, that we had out loud in
Right.
front of people.
Right.
That's how we've been talking to each other for years. People
Right.
thought it was,
Right.
oh, he talking
Right.
condescending.
If they
to
hear
her.
the stuff that's even if the cameras actually come on while this show was on, I'd be not working right now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, man. A lot happens, man, when minds like this are talking.
Right.
And so what happened was the integrity piece. When I said you can't sacrifice your money for your integrity, I was referring simply to the integrity of the method that was chosen to go about accomplishing your means.
Right.
That's all I was talking about.
Right.
And if you had heard the whole interview,
Right.
it would have made perfect sense. But I got ate up for it, so I learned some valuable lessons.
What?
You know, think really hard before you talk. You know, pick your words. Because, you know, DL amongst us is probably the most intelligent. The rest of us, me, Bernie, and Sid, that ain't quite mastered the English language the same way. So I thought I was just fine. Let's do GED to your ass. I mean, and what's crazy is this dude right here, I'm telling you, man, was like the dude we wanted to do the interviews for us, because he was articulate. Me,
wow.
Bernie, and Sid, we were just sitting there going, yeah. And you know, man, when it all jumped off, it got out of control. And you know, anybody that knows me, like brothers like you, and I've spent my whole life being a person of integrity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's all I've ever done. And you know, it's kind of hurtful, man, when you hear black people talking about you.
Man,
Because
it hurts. I tell you what, it hurts me knowing you. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, man, like I go play. Like, what about your boy? I'm like, hey, man, that I don't get
Dog.
the impression the cat that you.
Listen
I don't
to me,
see.
man. When you say sellout in Coon, what?
Right.
Who you talking about? The only way you can say that is you can't know me.
Yeah.
You can't know
Right.
me,
You
dog.
can't.
It's no way you know me.
Right.
You're a person who has never met me.
Right.
First of all, to sell out, I would have to be originally for a cause and then forsake that cause for money, fame, or some other type of trinket.
Right.
What have I ever done in my career that says that? Integrity is when you do what you say you're going to do. When have I ever not done?
Right.
There's not a single brother on this planet that could say Steve Harvey stepped on him, messed over him, jacked him around.
Took
I
their
ain't
money,
that
yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
I mean, man, look, Hey man, if you call me and you say, brother, I need, you get that back.
Right.
But that's the same way you are with me.
Right.
That's the same way I am with everybody that know me. So, man, it kind of pisses you off a little bit, man, because you be wanting to go, your black hair. Okay.
Yeah, too late. There it is.
So after this interview that DL did with Steve, I just gotta say I'm so much more disappointed in DL than probably I've ever been. I know Steve is his friend. I know he knew him for a long time. They go way back. They really kind of helped to create, probably comedy, especially like comedy tours and comedy shows and things like that. They really helped to kind of set that up, set the template for that back when DL was on, I think it was Comic View, back when he was on there, and he was unknown, but he made a name for himself. He was that dude. Him, Cedric the Entertainer, and then Steve, he was on Showtime at the Apollo. Back when these guys were younger, they had that hunger. They really wanted it. They went out there. They put their all into it. They like, yo, I want to make this a career. I want to be big. And these are the kind of things that I'm going to do in order to make it. And so it's really sad to kind of see these icons. And maybe not Steve so much, because he's been on a decline for years now. I look at who the old Steve Harvey was, Showtime on the Apollo Steve Harvey, and even the Steve Harvey show back in the 90s when he did that. That to me, all of that was just solid Steve Harvey. It was funny, it was relatable. It seemed like he was actually from the community, and now this dude done got a little bit of change in his pocket, and he I guess this is what happens. You just insulate yourself so much, because you don't want to really connect with the average person. You don't want, average people coming up to you, asking you for money, that kind of thing. I mean, this is what I'm presuming is going on, but I just feel like he insulates himself so much, and he's so big, and he just has a bunch of yes men and yes women around him, and just telling him that everything he does is great. But that's one thing that, especially for these comics, that's one thing that they should know more than anybody else, is that you always have to stay true to your craft. You always got to go back down in the dungeon, go back down to the small comedy clubs that you used to play at. That's one thing that I think DL used to do that. Jerry Seinfeld, I heard that he actually said that, sometimes he'll just pop up at a club and, just try out some new material. It's just that hunger. It's just when you really love what you do, that's the kind of stuff that you do. And, these guys, they've gotten old. And that's one of the worst things that can happen, is for you to get old, for you to get comfortable. And I understand, you should be able to enjoy the fruits of your labor. I get that part. You should be able to have big houses, take nice trips, buy nice things, get the cars, get the girls if that's what you want, that kind of thing. You should be able to do that. I get that. There's nothing wrong with that. But you still got to relate to your core audience. And when you do little stuff like this, it just shows that you're not relating to the audience anymore. You think you're above them. And you also think you're above other people who came up with you. Case in point with Monique. DL started off this whole thing talking about, he thought he thought the interview played like two people who loved each other. I'm like, nah, that ain't what love looks like to me. That's not, I mean, number one, two people who love each other, they really going to give it to each other, raw. So that whole thing was sanitized just because it was, probably a bunch of white people in the audience and the cameras were rolling. Trust me, if the cameras were not rolling and white folks were not in the audience, it would be such a different thing than what we saw. And of course, I'm doing this assuming that you guys have already seen the interview that Steve Harvey did with Monique. And that's kind of what set the whole thing off. That's what they're referencing right now. And I'll try to put a link to the video in the description so you can check that out if you haven't already. But it definitely didn't play like that. What it actually did play like was a woman, Monique, who called out a coward-ass Negro who couldn't defend the way he was not there for his so-called sister. He talking about, oh yeah, this is my sister, I got her back, whatever. But when it really counted, when it really mattered, this fool was not there. Monique is up there calling out the industry and saying, hey, this is what's going on. Lee Daniels, this is what you doing. Tyler Perry, this is what you doing. Oprah Winfrey, this is what you doing. And you may be icons to black people, all across this country. And in some cases, like say with Oprah, maybe across the world. But the way you treat me is not representative of that. And she's letting people know what's going on behind the scenes. And instead of Steve Harvey, dude, you already pretty much solidified. You should already have money in the bank. You should have stuff saved up so that you can go to bat for some people whenever they need you. But by you either not having your affairs in order, by you seemingly still needing money, by you being afraid that the faucet that's dripping out all of your work, such as like, your show, your talk show that's on right now, maybe your radio show, Family Feud, if you're afraid that faucet is going to be turned off, then apparently it's something that you didn't do in your life to ensure that you are in a better position than where you at. Because truth be told, if that stuff goes away, it sounds like to a degree, you're going to be right where Monique is right now. And at least she don't do everything perfect. Like the whole Netflix thing, that was some bullshit. You up here appealing to everyday people talking about we need to boycott Netflix because you didn't get $500,000. I'm like, you ain't never gave me no money, so why am I going to bat for you? You can do that with your family, but you can't really do that with your fans like that. You got to put yourself in a stronger position than where you at. But really and truly, those are rich people problems, so I'm not even going to get into that. Another thing DL said was that he thought that Steve did her a solid. I'm like, what? Steve didn't do anything for her. If anything, Monique probably was giving Steve a chance to maybe put himself in a better position, because if he is supposed to be the brother to Monique, then he definitely should have had better answers for why he was not there for her when he should have been. If anything, he put himself in the worst position, talking about he should have picked up the phone and called, but then he want to talk about, oh, I got these shows, I'm so busy, I'm doing all this stuff. Let me tell you, it's kind of like the homie Kenny Lattimore back in the day when he had that song Never Too Busy. You ain't never too busy for the people that you actually care about. Now, for most people, it's going to be their immediate family, could be their parents, could be their children, and their siblings. But even for really close friends, you're going to be there for them when they need you. And Monique needed some people to be standing behind her, but instead people stood way, 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 way behind her, to the point where she was just out there all by herself. And when she could have used some high profile or prominent people to, either vouch for her or to, do anything like that, where were they at? They were just basically protecting themselves. And this happens a lot. When these people, they get to be so big, and I guess they're part of this small club of either millionaires or Hollywood types or whatever. I guess to a degree they got to have each other's back, but at the same time, it's kind of like this. This just kind of goes to show you that when you're in the limelight like that, you still need to control your own work. You need to control your own property, because otherwise all you have is a high profile job. And if all you have is a job, then you're going to be afraid to actually speak your mind and do whatever, because you're afraid of the ramifications that's going to happen when the boss man finds out what you done said. That could be what you done said about him, could be what you done said about one of his friends or one of his associates, whatever it may be. But that's the fundamental problem that, people like Steve Harvey and anybody else who is purely a worker, that's the problem that they have. Now, contrast that with someone else who doesn't have a problem like that, say Howard Stern. This dude can pretty much do whatever the hell he wants to do. Basically, he's like, I bring the advertisers in, I bring the money in. Who wants to, sign me on with their network? That's what real power is. And if Steve doesn't have that kind of power, then he ain't nobody. He ain't nobody, and that is exactly what people mean by selling out. That he talking about some, sell out. Who you talking to? Like, dude, we talking about you, fool. You the one selling out, because you need to keep that money train coming in, because you don't have nothing that you set up on your own, to back you. There's nothing that you have that's independent of the Hollywood engine that you can do that and that will allow you to say whatever you want, speak your mind. You can't do it on Family Feud because that's a scripted show. You can't do it on a Steve Harvey show that's on TV because, of course, you got FCC censors and that kind of thing. So you can't say what you want to say. And you can't do it on your radio show, same thing. Radio censors and that kind of thing. The only time that you really could speak your mind is when you were out in front of an audience, either at a comedy club or doing a comedy special. That's where the power is. But you sold out your power and you gave it up by pursuing these other ventures, which in the short term, they may be more lucrative, but look at what you have to do to keep it going. Look at what you had to give up. You can no longer be yourself. You're only a shell of who you were just because of that. And if you so stupid to not understand that, then of course you ain't going to understand why people are calling you a sellout and a coon. I mean, only and the coon part comes in when you wanted to hobnob with Donald Trump. It's just certain things that black folks don't do that you should know as a black person. It's like one of those things that goes unsaid. It's just something that you should know. And apparently you don't know. Apparently you something is wrong with Steve Harvey. The fact that he's in the public eye, dude, you've been in the public eye for so long, you should already know what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say. And that junk he talking about like, the one thing that I learned was I need to think a long time before I speak or before I say something. Fool, you should have been known that. I don't understand why you 50 or 60 some years old and you don't already know this. And like we supposed to have sympathy for you, this old ass dude who been in the public eye and he still don't know how the game works. And the only thing that he can think of is protecting himself because he's just a selfish mofo. So, I mean, the whole world can see who Steve Harvey really is. And he talking about if you want to call me a sellout or a coon, that just shows that you don't know me. Nah, dude, we know you. We know who you are. And actually, truth be told, one of his old clips came up recently where he was talking about, what he would do for money back in the day. and how he would put on a monkey suit or do whatever just to get a little bit of change. So, he said that stuff, but I guess we thought it was just a joke. But dude, you've been telling us who you are. You've been showing us who you are for a long time. So yeah, we know you, Steve. So it ain't nothing that you can do to get around this. And dude, you too old to even change yourself. So the last thing that I want to bring up about this interview is just the fact that Steve was like, the interview should have been done in private, the interview between him and Monique. And I'm just wondering, like, why would the interview really need to be in private? The only reason that you would want the interview to be in private is because you're scared of the truth getting out. I mean, if you don't have anything to hide, and apparently Monique definitely feels this way because she will go on any platform, talk to any person, and let them know exactly how she feels about Lee Daniels, Oprah Winfrey, and Tyler Perry. So he just wants it to be in private because basically to save himself. It ain't got nothing to do with him trying to so-called protect her, which he never did and never had any intentions of doing. And she don't need the kind of so-called protection that someone like Steve has to offer anyway. She was definitely on point when she talked about him and integrity, which he has zero of. And he needs to take a hard look at himself if he does not like what people are saying about him. So he want to say that, oh, it's hurtful to have black people talking about you, calling you a sellout, calling you a coon. Well, why don't you try listening to the actual people who are calling you these things? Why don't you try to see where they're coming from? And why don't you understand that while you live in your body, you cannot see the changes that you have undergone like other people have who live outside of your body. I mean, it's just like as you grow older, to yourself, you always going to look the same. But it's not until you look at who you used to be, or you look at old pictures or old videos, or if you have someone who used to know you back in the day and then they meet you now and they're like, oh man, I remember when you used to look like XYZ. That's the only time that you really get yourself checked, basically. People can tell you like, yo, you used to be like this, now you like that. And you're not really going to know that a lot of times unless you really want to be true to yourself. And that's one thing that Steve does not want to do. He does not want to be true to himself, and he does not want to improve himself. That's why he's insulated himself in all of these different venues, doing the Family Feud scripted show, doing the TV show, the TV talk show that's also scripted, doing a radio show that's also scripted. Comedy and comedians are really all about going off script and just doing stuff on the fly, honing their craft, that kind of thing. And Steve is just a lazy Negro who does not want to go back on the circuit. He does not want to go back to where he came from, not as far as where he lived, but just the profession that he used to do. Like, these old comics cannot go into any comedy club and just own that mug. They can't do it like they used to do it because they're out of practice. And they know they're out of practice, and that's why they got to keep doing all this other stuff to try to insulate them from that. Because they know that, if he dare try to do some kind of Kings of Comedy today, that dude will get booed probably before he even steps foot on the stage. The MC gonna bring him on, and already the booze probably gonna start unless he got his section of supporters out there already. Or unless he did pull the 50 Cent and just like bought up, half of the seats. Just so that he can cherry pick and put who he wants out there. But he is just not the same person. And until he comes to grips with that, he is just going to have to accept the fact that people don't see him like he used to be. He is not that dude who was on the Apollo no more. I don't know what happened to that Steve. But one thing I know for sure, that dude needs some damn chapstick. He needs something. He needs some Vaseline. He needs some industrial strength Vaseline, because I ain't never seen that dude's lips chapped that bad. That is just a horrible look. And he want to talk about editing videos. Somebody need to edit that video and do some Photoshop on that fool's lips, because that is ridiculous, homie. You need to get you some Vaseline and call it a day. That's all I got to say on that. Follow me on Twitter at I am that angry man. Follow me on Instagram at that angry man, and subscribe to the podcast. You can find me on all the popular platforms: YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and of course on thatangryman.com. See y'all.